Pamela Banks, thank you for coming to Ethio's Media. This is a media center that has been a district in the city area for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So we're really happy to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, and I feel like I'm home because I literally live across the street from your studio.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. Pamela, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we start anything?
Absolutely. Like I said, I live literally across the street from the studio. I've lived in Seattle since 1977. I was born in Portland, Oregon. My mother was half Japanese and half Chinese. My grandfather was actually an immigrant to this country. He was Japanese. My father's African American. I lived in Portland until I was 17, where I came to school at the University of Washington. I'm a first-generation college graduate, and like I said, I always tell people I bleed purple, so I'm a Husky to the core. Spent my first 30 years in Seattle of my working career working in city government, where I actually got introduced really to the East African community by working in transportation on the light rail alignment on Martin Luther King. And I worked in housing and human services as well, spent a good part of my career working for the Department of Neighborhoods, and then worked for Mayor Nichols as his outreach director. I'm currently the president and CEO of the Urban League, and we focus on programs and services that help African American people and other disenfranchised or low-income communities around employment, education, health, and housing. So we look at the disparities that happen in our community, and we empower communities by providing access and opportunities in those 4 pillars. And I'm really excited because that organization is literally the street, so I live and work in the neighborhood currently. Now I'm running for Seattle City Council in District 3.
All right, that's great. I know there's a lot of things happening right now, especially when we talk about African American people. I know there's a lot of, especially we're talking about Black Matter, Life Matter, all those things. We hear a lot of issues about the housing, all those things. Would you tell us a little bit your involvement on that part of it?
Sure. So we can use the Central District or District 3 as an example. So historically, the Central District, which is in District 3, was historically African American. Black people were redlined. They used the term redlining, meaning that banks would not give loans to the African American people outside of this area. So historically, it had been almost 80% African American. And then in the 2010 census, we know now it's under 17%. So during the mortgage foreclosure crisis and through gentrification, income inequality, Black people have lost across the country half of their wealth because we lost property during the foreclosure crisis, and that's what's helped create this big income gap. So right now, if you think about it, if you look at the average white family in the county, their average income is around $98,000. For that banks would not give loans to African American people outside of this area. So historically, it had been almost 80% African American, and then in the 2010 census, we know now it's under 17%. So during the mortgage foreclosure crisis and through gentrification, income inequality, Black people have lost across the country half of their wealth because we lost property during the foreclosure crisis, and that's what's helped create this big income gap. So right now, if you think about it, if you look at the average white family in the county, their average income is around $98,000. For Black Americans, it's around $32,000. A lot of that has to do because we're not in the tech field, or we've been held back or haven't had access to those technology jobs. Systematic racism, Jim Crow laws, slavery, all that plays in. And I think what's gone on across the country, especially around Black Lives Matter, especially the incidences that have happened in Ferguson and Baltimore and New York, it's put a spotlight on how those things, especially the prison industrial complex, Jim Crow, slavery, those systems were put in place to keep Black Americans down and out, and so now it's put a face on that, and so that's what I think. And for this area, the gentrification, us losing our, not only our homes but our businesses, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to run for office is to help kind of bring that to light and work on systematic racism, Jim Crow laws, I mean slavery, all that plays in. And I think what's gone on across the country, especially around Black Lives Matter, especially the incidences that have happened in Ferguson and Baltimore and New York, is it's put a spotlight on how those things, especially the prison industrial complex, Jim Crow, slavery, those systems were put in place to keep Black Americans down and out. And so now it's put a face on that. And so that's what I think, and for this area, the gentrification, us losing our, not only our homes, but our businesses. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to run for office, is to help kind of bring that to light and work on, work with the community and then work with other organizations like yours to bring that to light and help build back the Black population back into the Central District and across the city.
Great, that's very good. The other thing is I know there's a lot of issues, right? Like one of the issues, like it told us. I think there's some important issues for you that you're running for this council. Some of them, they came up, they have the 3 issues that you're going to work with. What is the most important issues that you're going to really work on it when
I get in council? So I've doorbelled probably over 7,500 homes personally during the campaign. And our district really goes from about Bayview Street to the Montlake Cut, and then from the lake to Interstate 5. And so I'll tell you the top 3 issues that I've heard knocking on doors has been public safety, transportation, and of course housing affordability. But the other big one for me, I actually have 4 top ones. The 4th one is really economic development. It's supporting small business as well as helping people get employed, get jobs. Because we can't change the trajectory of what happens with, our East African brothers and sisters as well as African American people unless we're employed or that we have access and opportunities to good education. So I want to work on those 4 top things. Everybody's tired of, the public safety issue is big for us because we have a gang issue in the Black community. There are some gang issues, some culture, tribal issues, I'm sure, in your community. We're seeing that. We have a big gun issue in our city. There's a lot of guns. There's been shootings have actually been up 50 or 30% in the Central District over this year. Seattle police have confiscated more guns, and from the lake to Interstate 5. And so I'll tell you the top 3 issues that I've heard knocking on doors has been public safety, transportation, and of course housing affordability. But the other big one for me, I actually have 4 top ones. The 4th one is really economic development. It's supporting small business as well as helping people get employed, get jobs. Because we can't change the trajectory of what happens with, our East African brothers and sisters as well as African American people unless we're employed or that we have access and opportunities to good education. So I want to work on those 4 top things. Everybody's tired of, the public safety issue is big for us because we have a gang issue in the Black community. There are some gang issues, some culture, tribal issues, I'm sure, in your community. We're seeing that. We have a big gun issue in our city. There's a lot of guns. There's been shootings have actually been up 50 or 30% in the Central District over this year. Seattle police have confiscated more guns in the city the first 6 months of the year than they did all of last year. And we're going to break a record on gun confiscation. And we have to get to the root of why people are picking up guns and why people are shooting each other. And again, a lot of that has to do with systemic racism. It has to do with us not having the ability to have access to good jobs, to affordable housing, and education. And so those things all play in together for me. Economic development, a lot of immigrant and refugee folks in the community have come into the area to open businesses. We have to support those businesses. And when I say support, I mean economically. When we decide that we're going to do a major transportation project that's happening on 23rd Avenue. And so that when those types of issues happen with the city, I think the city needs to be more responsible in how we can help businesses stay open and accessible during construction. Because I know that impacts a lot of the businesses that are in this area that happen to be Somali. And so those are some of the things that we need to work on. And I think that that's the beauty of this district system, where I will be representing everybody in the district on a variety of issues, and that you'll have that access and opportunity to have your voice heard, because I will be here to talk to you.
Great, that's very important. The other thing I want to ask is about the youth,
Yes.
especially. Like here, there's a program here, for example, the East African kids, they'll come here. In the summer, we have a lot of African American kids, Hispanic kids here coming, learning about technology, media, and all those things. And next door, there is a youth violence group.
Yeah.
They're working there. But this program, I think, is helping a lot of young people. And what are you going to do for the youth, especially in the after-school program and all those
Yes.
things? Can you talk about that?
So I have a strong history in education and working with youth in this district. So when my son went to Garfield High School, when he was young, I ran a baseball program for 10 years. From the time he was T-ball all the way through Garfield High School, we ran an inner-city baseball program. So it's important to keep our youth active and keep our youth busy. And so having this is a gem in the community, because a lot of young people don't have access to visual audio, television, radio, that kind of thing. And so being able to support things like this. So one of the things I'd like to do is next year, when the city is ramping up to do summer youth employment, that you get interns here, that the city raises the money and that you get paid interns that come here to work. And definitely building bridges with, like the Youth Violence Prevention Initiative, because I think all young people want to be safe, they all want good educations, they all want to have summer jobs. And I think we, the city, can do a better job at that. But the other thing is about public education, where a lot of our kids are going into school. While the city of Seattle and the mayor and the city council don't govern public school system, we do have levies that we put a lot of funding into the schools, and I want to make sure that that funding goes to the schools that are in most need. And so Bailey Gatzert, that school is the most high poverty elementary school in the district, and I know there's a lot of East African children that go to that school. So we need to make sure that they have the resources that they need, that they can succeed. When we're kicking off this early learning, this early childhood education, we need to make sure that women that had childcare, that they get certified so that they can have access to that money, so that our kids have access to that quality preschool and that quality early childhood education that we know is crucial in making sure that our kids are ready when they start school. They need to be reading. We know that if our kids are not reading at grade level by third grade, they're planning prison beds.
Exactly.
We have got to stop that. So at the Urban League, what I always tell people, we have a cradle to career or cradle to college pipeline. We are going to make sure that our people have access to these quality programs, and so that we can, in this prison industrial complex.
Wow, that's great, because I'm a teacher.
For
the last 22 years, I've been teaching at the Emerson. Yes, and I see that a lot. There's no enough after-school programs.
Right.
And the school is getting big. There's not enough places for kids. I have like 35 kids.
Right.
In the South End, that's what's happening right now. And I think you're going to be helping us with that probably.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, I'm on the board of the Alliance for Education. So the Alliance for Education is a philanthropic nonprofit where we raise money from all around the city, and we support public schools. One of the other things that we need to do is we need to make sure that we see teachers that look like you, that our kids see teachers that look like them, to give them that. Because I think that that's what really spurred me to the thought of going to college, was I got to see black teachers, both male and female, and our kids need to see us as doctors and lawyers and architects and police and firefighters, but especially teachers. So I bring up the Alliance because the Alliance is in partnership with the University of Washington and Seattle Public Schools, and we have a teacher residency program. So we are trying to find more teachers of color to put in the schools. So they go through a year-long training, and then they're put in a high-poverty school with a certified teacher like yourself, and that teacher's paid a stipend because basically you're training teachers, right?
Exactly.
And those teachers work in the school for the year, and then we hope that they're placed in a school after they graduate. So we have to support very creative public-private partnerships in order to address, the education needs of all of our students, but especially our kids of color.
Exactly. That's why we need also counseling just person looks like you.
Yeah, exactly. I want
them.
I want kids to see us and say, I want to do that, or I can do that. Because when you say that, like for the Urban League's been around. It's the second oldest civil rights advocacy organization in the country. There's 90 Urban Leagues in 35 states. The Urban League in Seattle is 87 years old. I'm only the second woman to be the CEO. So those are the things that our kids need to see, that there's an opportunity, that they have the ability to do things like this, to be teachers, to run, to run television studios or radio, or own them. Matter of fact, own them and run them.
Exactly.
And that's, to be entrepreneurs. And it's all about access and opportunity.
Exactly. Urban League, by the way, I had there's a lot of I used to do art shows myself. I'm an artist.
Right.
And so Urban Leagues helped me in 90s, 92, 93, 94. I had a show there with a group. So I mean, I know what Urban Leagues does.
Right, and I want to bring that back. I've met so many artists. It was oh my gosh, used to do these phenomenal art shows. I was like, we want to bring it back and do it at the Northwest African American Museum, because now we have a museum, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I do want to bring back.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is anything you want to tell us more about? You want to say something for our community, also especially for East African community?
Yes.
And also, we need some way, I think we need to make a break that African American people,
Yes.
East African American, we have to come together. I think that's important. That's what always, we don't win.
Right.
Because we always talk about East Africans over here,
Yeah.
African American over here. But we all the same, because our youth, especially when you see them on the street, you can't tell
Exactly. Right.
African or whatever you call it.
I would love to work on being able to build those bridges. I'm really proud of my record that I've had in the East African community, and especially around. And I have long-term relationships with folks from the light rail, being able to help so many businesses stay in business. But I do want to work on things with our youth, because I know that, and I've been told this by elders, and especially my dear friend Sabat Tena, who ended up moving back to Ethiopia. But that when people are immigrating over here, that they're told bad things about black people, that we're drug dealers, that we do crime, stay away from us. So people come in with these preconceived notions, and I think working together we will definitely be stronger for all black people and our African brothers and sisters, because we were from there, and I think what I'd like to do, one of the things I'd really like to do, is work on bringing some black American kids and African kids and go back to Africa, because I think that would be an amazing experience, because I know being born here, when I've been to Africa twice, it is life-changing to absolutely know where you've come from, especially for second generation East Africans, right? They've been born here, right? But to go back to your country and understand the importance of our culture, our language, our food, respecting your elders. But I would love to do some kind of joint trip like that. So that's something I'm going to work on. And then just being able to support businesses and collaborating. One of the things that I'm supporting is we want to do a multicultural center down in Southeast Seattle. This idea came up about probably 6 years ago, and then you get the mayor's change, and then things change, and so we want to help do that. And then we could have the Urban League there, and we could have East African Community Center, the Ethiopian, the Eritreans, and so really building bridges like that. So doing more partnerships and doing it with intent, right? And being able to support one another when we run for office or school board or jobs. One of the things I'm really proud of is our employment program at the Urban League is focused on African American men and other men of color that have had multiple barriers to employment. We put our first 3 East African brothers through that program, and they're now working. Great. And so those are some of the, and people don't know that, because they just think Urban League, you only do this. But that for me was really important, that we had that bridge, and those young men are now working and being able to deal with issues, around, police accountability and helping, if you have an issue in the community, that you could come to the Urban League and then we could help walk you through some of the challenges that can happen when you get, or you don't know where to turn. And so just building bridges like that, I think, would be very helpful, and I would continue to work on that as your councilwoman and as the CEO of the Urban League.
Wow, thank you very much.
This is what I want to do, is internships. When I talk about internships, is bringing young people in to my office, and so they can see how politics happen. So Dominique that young woman that's out there, that's my campaign manager, I met her parents on the very first election, council. It was a judge. It was a candidate that I worked on, and I met her parents. So when I went to go put my campaign staff together, I said it's very important that there's someone that looks like me, or that we have people of color working on this campaign. It is hard to find. So I would love to be able to find more young people to get involved in the political process. And I saw some young people when they did the big summer youth employment program. We had some of our kids working in the police department, some of our kids working in the court system, so they can understand these systems. And so those are some of the things that I would love to do, and definitely internships, potentially hiring someone to work on my staff, that kind of thing.
That's very good.
Yeah, great question.
Those are good points.
Thank
you, Pamela.
Thank you. And I'm here. I'm so glad that you're in the schools working.
Thank you.
And I think that Seattle Teacher Residency Program, I was really excited. That's one of the reasons I got on the Alliance for Education, because they raise a lot of money. And I want to make sure, that it goes to the schools that need it the most, and that our kids are benefiting, and especially around the education levy. And now the county has this Best Start First Kids. We have to be on the, one of the reasons I ran for office is I'm like, we can fight on the outside, but we have to be on the inside. Exactly. Setting policy change won't happen. And I'm going to be that voice for all of us. And, I don't know, people have tried to say that I said, negative things about the immigrant and refugee community, and my record. I've been down in the valley. I have had long relationships with people in our community, and plan to do that on council. So I will be that voice, and making sure, like, even the immigrant and refugee office, I don't know how many people really know that's there or what they do, and so it's really staffing that up, and keeping the city. So I was really proud in the work that I did, was to get languages translated, having interpreters on board. We have to do that intentionally, and we also have to look at hiring people inside city government that speak different languages. And the public outreach and engagement liaison program, I was at the Department of Neighborhoods and got to launch that. And again, when mayors change and staff leave, things get weakened, and I want to bring that back, because we were hiring from all the East African communities liaisons, paying them to do that outreach, because it's culturally competent outreach, making sure we had the right food there, making sure we weren't meeting during Ramadan, and having the materials translated and having the interpretation. And I think that is so important. As our city is going to be more and more diverse, and embracing all of that, enforcing government, and I'm talking at every level, that they recognize it and accept it. We are going to be the minority majority, but we need to do it with power. And unless we're sitting at city council, unless we're the teachers and the principals, the administrators, it won't change for us. And that's what we're encouraging. I want to encourage people to step out there. Running for office is not easy. But I'm glad that I did it. I learned a lot, and I know that when we get into these positions that we can really affect change. And then if we're running against some, barriers on the inside, I know I can come to the community on the outside and say, you got my back, I got your back.
All right.
Appreciate you having me on, I really do.
That's great. Good to hear from you.
Okay, and I'll come back, okay? I promise I'll come back. Thank you so much. My name is Pamela Banks. I'm the president and CEO of the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, and I am running for Seattle City Council in position 3. I support multimedia resources in the Training Institute. I came across them about 10 years ago when they actually interviewed me at a community meeting down in the Rainier Beach area. I think the work that MMRTI provides is crucial to our community. They are providing a gateway for young people to get engaged in multimedia services, and they actually do the production here in the studio. And it's just an amazing opportunity to really expose young people of all ages and ethnicities in this type of work. So we need to continue to support MMRTI, and anything that you can do to support the station, I encourage you to do so. And thank you for having me here today.
Please vote.
መጪውን የኢትዮጵያን ሚሌኒየም ልክ እንደ አብሮ መብላት መጠጣታችን ለለውጥ ተጋግዘን በመስራት የሀገራችንን እድገት የምናይበት ጅምር እንዲሆን የእግዚአብሔር ቅዱስ ፈቃዱ ይሁን እላለሁ። መልካም በዓል፣ መልካም ጊዜ።